Hello, my name is Tiffany Leach, and this assignment is for Intro to Interpreting. Today's date is September the 28th, 2014, and I attend Troy University. My topic for my research was CODA interpreter versus non-CODA interpreters, which is held at a higher standard and which is more qualified than the other. My abstract for this project states that the purpose of this research is to determine whether CODA interpreters are held at a higher standard by DEF than non-CODA interpreters. And basically what I want my research to show is whether CODA interpreters are quoted more qualified than non-CODA interpreters. I want to show whether people feel that CODA interpreters are more qualified versus non-CODA interpreters because they grew up around the language, around the culture, and in the community. The purpose of my research is to determine whether CODA interpreters are skilled / qualified and preferred by DEF more than non-CODA interpreters. As we stated that they grew up in a household with deaf parents and one or more. They grew up around the language, around the culture, so therefore, they may be a little more advanced than non-CODA interpreters. And it may be vice versa. Even though they grew up in their environment, that doesn't mean that they picked up on sign language. Because I know a lot of CODAs who, don't know how to sign and who are not interpreters. Another one is to determine if the experience of the deaf culture and the acquiring of interpreting skills is the same for CODAs and non-CODAs. This refers back to a lot of CODA interpreters, well, the ones that I know, they usually don't go to school like we do. When I refer to we, I'm talking about non-CODA interpreters. Non-CODA interpreters, we tend to go to school and we tend to learn the language. We tend to interact with the deaf community, and it's usually in our college years. And we tend to interact with the deaf culture, and we tend to go to school and we tend to learn. And I wanted to see whether CODA interpreters, because a lot of times CODA interpreters, they don't attend school to get that training and get those skills. So I wanted to know if those skills are already acquired, or is that something that just come natural to them. So we wanted to kind of compare the CODA and non-CODA when it comes to getting education or getting training for skills. Also, the purpose of this research is to determine whether being a CODA interpreter alone qualifies you as being an interpreter rather than a non-CODA interpreter. There may be people who feel that, well, because they're a CODA, yeah, they can interpret, they can assign, and they may be more faster to choose a CODA interpreter versus a non-CODA interpreter. And then again, it can be vice versa because, as I said, all CODA interpreters, they may or may not possess that skill. And the last one is determine why CODA interpreters get in the field of interpreting. A lot of my coworkers are CODA interpreters, and a lot of time they state they don't know why they became an interpreter because they had to interpret so much growing up. So it kind of, I just kind of wanted to see why did a lot of CODA interpreters become interpreters when a lot of time they tell about how they had to do so much interpreting when they were growing up. Did the research provide answers to my questions? Yeah and no. There was not a lot of information online about CODA interpreters and non-CODA interpreters to kind of answer some of the questions that I want to answer. So I mainly had to work off of my case study. The method that I used when I conducted my case study was I found 5 CODA interpreters and 5 non-CODA interpreters. I contacted them and I set up time and dates of when I can get with them and I can interview them so that I can get their feedback with the questions that I had. None of the interpreters wanted to be recorded. They preferred doing over the phone. Some didn't mind being recorded, but because of time schedules and it kind of conflicted, so mostly we did, all of them I did over the phone. And I contacted all of them and I asked them the 10 questions, and at the end I just kind of compiled all the answers together. My findings of the research. As I stated, there was not a lot of information, but there was some online. Some There was one article that talked about CODA interpreters not being up to par in their skills because they do not attend ITP programs. And so some of the comments that I had from some of the CODA interpreters, and they do sometimes find it difficult because, as I stated, a lot of them, they do not attend ITP programs. Here in Mississippi, we have the QA, and that's the Quality Assurance Test, and that's the test that we take in order to get certified to interpret. And a lot of times, the CODA interpreters, they just go ahead and take that test alone, and that certifies them to be able to interpret. Whereas non-CODA interpreters, we tend to go to school, we tend to, we go to college, we go to ITP, and we learn the language, we learn the skills, we learn all the fundamentals and all the linguistic and all that's involved with interpreting. Whereas CODA interpreters, they don't go and get the gist of the linguistic parts, and they're good with their interpreting skills, but the other parts to interpreting, they don't get it because they don't attend an ITP program. Also, whether there were some statements in the article regarding whether a CODA interpreter, were they better than a regular interpreter, and the article stated that CODA interpreters are good, but CODA interpreters that attend ITP are even better. And like I said, it just kind of depends. And a lot of the feedback that I got from the CODA interpreters and the non-CODA interpreters basically said that you can't say that one is better than the other, because there are some CODA interpreters that don't have good interpreting skills, and they're not the best, and deaf wouldn't prefer them. And then there are non-CODA interpreters that are the same, so it can kind of be vice versa. I guess it mainly depends on the individual and how they assert themselves. When it comes to who does the deaf community prefer, CODA or non-CODA interpreters, and that can kind of be vice versa too. I found information about that, and a lot of the information said that the deaf community really don't trust CODAs because they're heavily in the underbelly of the deaf community. So that means that a lot of time, like they say, when you're communicating with a deaf person, that they don't sign the way to hearing people as they do the deaf people. And I guess it goes the same way with the being in the deaf community. There's some parts of the deaf community that hearing people haven't experienced, but CODAs they have, because they grew up and that's where they live and that's where they grew up at. So a lot of time, a lot of the deaf, they don't want CODA interpreters to interpret for them because they don't trust them, because they feel that their business will be put out there. And in the article, it says that deaf request CODA interpreters, and they only request them because they don't have to worry about the communication. They know that everything will be interpreted okay, but they don't trust them. But they don't trust non-CODA interpreters either. So they rather go with the CODA interpreters, because they don't trust non-CODA interpreters just worse than they do the CODA interpreters. So, and when I spoke with the interpreters, a lot of them, their feedback, they didn't agree with that, because a lot of time with the deaf, if they don't trust you, they don't care whether you're CODA or not. If they don't trust you, then they will not allow you to interpret for them. And me, myself, I have seen deaf that will not go to an appointment, or that will turn down interpreting service because the person who's there, they know that they will kind of tell their business, and so they won't allow them to interpret for them. So that can kind of be iffy. Other findings were that basically deaf CODAs, they didn't feel that they were more skilled than regular interpreters. They kind of felt that they were equal. And non-CODA interpreters felt that CODA interpreters, kind of were better than them because they grew up, they had the exposure at an early age to the deaf community, to the language, to the culture. So the non-CODA interpreters feel that they're equal to the CODA interpreters feel that they're equal to non-CODA interpreters, whereas the non-CODA interpreters feel that the CODA interpreters are better than them because of them being introduced to the language, the culture, and the community at an early age. So those were some of the findings from my research. In conclusion of my paper and of my research, when I finished everything, it basically boiled down to that one is not better than the other. And it has to be on an individual basis. We can't say what the CODAs are better than the non-CODA interpreters. I think it's more individualized. It all depends on how that individual asserts themselves and the type of training, whether they're motivated to do the training, to put in the work to become a better qualified interpreter. So the finding can't say that one is better than the other because, it's just individualized and that they're all equal and they're good CODA interpreters, they're good non-CODA interpreters, they're bad CODA interpreters, they're bad non-CODA interpreters, and it goes that way with the skills and all of that. And I asked the question with a lot of CODA interpreters because I have a lot of coworkers who are CODAs, and I hear the stories of them being pulled out of school, having to interpret, that school wasn't really important, that their parents would come pull them out of school to interpret doctor appointments, or they would pull them out of school to interpret for their friends. So really school wasn't a priority, when it came to the deaf family member needed something to interpret. And a lot of time they, complain about how they had to interpret. So I wonder, like, okay, you complained about having to, being pulled out, pulled out and interpreting all the time, but yet you became an interpreter. And a lot of time, that's what they feel. They've been doing it for majority of their life. So a lot of them said that's why they tend to get in the field because they know that this is something that they always can do by them growing up and having the background with their family members. A lot of times they try to do something else, it don't be successful, so therefore they went back and relied on the interpreting. And these are the findings from my presentation, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.